I've always wondered whether we are the grand creators of everything. You know, we seem to be. Like, here I am, I've got a knife, my thoughts become reality. If I think better, then I create things. If I do things, if you want something to change, you do something and it changes. But I always had a sense that we, it's not as it seems. Maybe we're the objects of creation or the subjects of creation. Like life is lived through us, and we're not quite as in control as we thought.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another episode of Might Help, Can't Hurt, Conversations with Leaders, Doers, and Friends. And I am delighted to have with me today a leader-doer friend, Nic Askew. And Nic is a filmmaker. You kind of now call yourself a bit more of a portrait artist, from what I can tell. But soul biographer.
Filmmaker was a cop out always. It was just an easy thing to say, and people go, "Oh, right, okay." And then occasionally, they'd say, "Well, what kind of films do you make?" And then it got kind of strange.
Yeah.
But sometimes they didn't say that, and they just assumed that I was a filmmaker, and they knew what a filmmaker was.
Well, I liked the way in your bio, and I remember when you first shared this with me, you introduced yourself as a glorious ignoramus. And I happen to have a copy of the poem right here. If you don't, do you know it, or do you mind? Do you want me to read it?
I can read it. I'll tell you why.
I'd love to hear it from you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll have to. I can't remember the words, but I do have a copy somewhere. I wrote it as a joke, really, as an explanation to someone to tell them what an ignoramus was, because the Latin means we don't know, which was very much my sense of myself behind the camera. So I kind of wrote it as a joke, and then I quite liked it. And then I seem to have inherited the name, largely because I call myself that, and I really meant it, although without explanation, it does sound a little rude.
No, I remember sitting in a restaurant in Thousand Oaks with you and Tim Galway and a really cool guy who I cannot remember. Okay.
Ivan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you saying that, and I actually wrote about it the next week because I just thought it was I had no idea famous had a positive connotation.
Yeah, I was telling some people yesterday how that came about. I knocked on your door and essentially asked you whether you could come out to play. That I hadn't seen you in years, but I was in LA filming, and there was this guy called Ivan who you met. He used to be a professional soccer player, and then runs an aerospace company. And I was staying with him, and he knew I was filming, and I said, "Why don't you come along?" And he goes, "What are we doing?" And said, "That doesn't matter, just come along." And so he came along, and then we filmed in Santa Monica, I think, down there. And then I said, "Oh, I'm going to email Michael or text you, because I haven't seen you in years, and I know you're fairly close by, not too far." And I said, "Why don't you come along?" He went, "Okay." And so he came along, and then I said, "Oh, I usually when I'm up in the hills this way, I go and see Tim." And you went, "Tim who?" And I went, "Tim Galway." And he went, "Oh, I loved him. His book was really important to me." I said, "Oh, you should come along." So then 4 of us were together, and then we spent the night in that Brazilian restaurant. Yeah. And there was this kind of sense of a make it up as you go along day. And I'm very keen on this kind of make it up as you go along life. And then where the make it up as you go along comes from is somewhere else. It's not you constructing, right? I've seen that over there, and I think I want to be that. You're essentially letting life live through you rather than be lived by you. And I think the Glorious Ignoramus came from a sense of that as well, from a sense of being behind the camera. So the way that I would make a film, and I remember making that film with you in the hotel in Kensington, that really big tall hotel, and this was 15 years ago or something. So
I thought it probably was 2005.
Yeah, it was when I first ever picked the camera up. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that I had to do it. So I had no training, and I still haven't. But I just kind of sat there and listened, and I think it was similar. Now it seems to be a little stiller and less words, but there was this real sense of, okay, most people are expecting an interview. And there's this exchange between this guy called Michael and this guy called Nic. And so Nic will ask a question that he's probably thought about, and it's probably designed to extract something really quite useful or important from this chap called Michael. But I essentially do the opposite. So everything kind of emerges. It's out of stillness, really, that the response comes. And what I found was when words come from a place of no need, they come from a very different place. So they're not words spoken at the world or into the world by someone. They're essentially words spoken through someone. And what I realized in that space was I don't know very much at all. Like I don't know the person. I couldn't possibly know the person. And so I'll go find, I'll switch my camera off just so I don't look weird reading it. So here you go.
I suspect you look pretty much exactly like you, but with your lips moving. But yeah, go for it.
Well, you know, and my eyes darting across the screen.
Ooh,
So here it is, the glorious ignoramus, which I never meant to describe me, but it did describe the state that I am behind the camera, and anyone essentially can be with each other. So it's very short. It just goes, the glorious ignoramus. I don't know, but I know that I don't know. I love that I don't know, that I can never know for sure. So I've stopped looking to understand you or convince you, and now finally I can see you. I'm a glorious ignoramus. That's it.
And that's gorgeous. And I call it most often the divine unfolding. What you that sense of, oh, and then the next thing, and the next thing, and it does feel like it's already there, but you can't get to it till you've unfolded the next piece. And there's no point in kind of planning too far ahead because you don't know what's going to be behind the next fold.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I noticed from behind the camera. So 15, 16 years of sitting very still with people. I realized that it was so much better not to direct anything. As soon as you were directing, like in the space between you and me, it looks like I can see you, and there's nothing there. But of course, just because we can't see something there or touch something in between us, there is something there. There's a whole load of opinions that you and I hold about the other, about a guy who lives on the West Coast, who used to be in soap operas in England, in Wales, and
who's in color.
Yeah.
Everyone knows the world is black and white.
And the black, yeah, exactly. And it's hard to see someone and let there be peace. When you're looking through this opinion, we hold opinions about ourselves. The main thing in between us is this need. I mean, there are implicit needs that we hold all the time. There might be a need for me to make a good film of you, to show you as best I can as the best side of you in order to get ... fill in the blank, a result. And the main need is, we all want to belong. It kind of drives us, this yearning to belong, even though we don't usually state it that way. And I noticed that when that's diffused, when there is nothing in the space between us, so when there is no requirement, so if you and I could sit here for 40 minutes and really not need anything, like what if we were just to sit kind of quietly or not say much at all, and that be enough?
That makes for terrible radio. But
well, it does for some people, and for others, it doesn't. There's a place for it. But from that place comes can come a response which is very different. I mean, in film terms, and I watch edits a lot, so I'd film an encounter with someone, and normally someone would step up to the camera with something to say. And I often mostly film live now. Well, I did in the days when we could. Yeah. And so the image...
Knee filming in the time of...
Yeah. But Zoom works amazingly well, even StreamYard. So normally someone would come up to the camera, and the image is actually taken from the camera and projected onto a large screen. So if there's 500 people in a movie theatre, it's on the movie theatre screen. If there's 10 people in a room, it's usually on a big HD TV or something. So there's nowhere to hide for the person. You're just seeing this, and there's nowhere to hide, and it's amazing. And so normally what happens is someone comes and plonks himself down, and they're used to speaking at or to the world. They're just used to it. I'm going to tell this story of something. I remember And I say elderly. I mean, he was probably 70 something. He stepped up in front of the camera. I didn't know who he was. I knew his name was Ted, and he came but he came with something to say. Absolutely, he came with something to say. It was so obvious. You could hear he's come to serve the world. It turns out he was a US congressman, and he'd come to give his sense of service to the world. And it was interesting, but it didn't last very long because I said, look, we don't need to, let's not start there. And so we just kind of diffused it and started from somewhere very still with no words. So he just kind of sat there. And I just told him, as I usually do, look, Ted, if you and I sit here for the rest of the day, till the end of time, or for the next 10 minutes, and you don't even open your eyes, I think that will be enough. And somehow, telling someone that, and knowing, and when it's known that this person you're sitting with needs nothing from you, nothing different. The words come from somewhere different. It becomes very self-evident in an edit, because you look back, it's almost binary. So normally the words that we hear and the words that fill the world come with some kind of need attached to them, if you like. This guy Ted, he would want to speak, and he'd want to be serving the world. I want to do good in the world, and I want to. I don't know if this is the case, but I want to be seen as someone who's worth something in the world, doing useful work.
Yeah.
And there's a place for that. In fact, it's most of what the world is comprised of. But there's also a place for the other, which is where words are almost spoken through you. They're not spoken by you; they're spoken through you. So you start to speak, and you don't even know what's going to be on this side of the full stop or the period, let alone the far side. So you're going in with a kind of blind faith into an encounter, and you don't know where it's going to go. And in one way, it's utterly terrifying at the beginning for someone to take the first step, and then there they are. They're in what many people call the flow. It's like a stream of consciousness. Now, that's what I make my films from. That's where I know that I'm a glorious ignoramus, because I can't know someone. They don't even know themselves. I mean, the truth of it is, and I've noticed this, is that once you really start to examine this, your sense of identity is kind of irrelevant.
Well, let me jump in on that, because I watched your TED Talk working title. At least that's what it said. I think the title, as opposed to it was.
Yeah, that was years ago. Yeah, I remember.
I wanted to see. Because for all of the things you've filmed that I've seen, and for the few times we've hung out together, I realized I know very little about you. So I just thought that would be a fun thing to watch, and it was. What struck me about it was two things. I'd love to just touch on them both. The first was you're the only other person I've seen so far who openly winged his TED Talks, which. That's sort of always been my, I had to literally, we went on for months back and forth with them. And I just kept saying, look, if you need me to plan this, I'm out. Because I want to, I love this space of, I don't know, let's see, let's find out together. Let's let it happen in real time. So there was the fun of that. But then also, so I'd love you to touch on that, but I'd also love to move towards this kind of, what you described, you didn't use this phrase, but I heard it as a kind of a pure listening, where the listener almost disappears and yet is fully present. Because I have found in my work, and I kind of think in the world, that's such a powerful way to show up.
Yeah, okay. So TED Talk, it must have been 6 or 7 years ago. I remember I did 2 that year. Or TEDx talks. Yeah. One, they made me prepare a bit, so I made 3 slides and then talked around that, and it was, I think I called it something like "How to See Someone Naked" or something, catchy title. But
I had to choose between the two.
and
catchy title.
It was all right. It was fun. I mean, it was fun in a traditional sort of way, and but the other one, which was a much bigger theatre, like with a big production crew and whatever. I remember distinctly going there and when it came to my time to practice, do the run through, I said, "Oh no, I don't think I will." They said, "Where are your slides?" And I said, "I haven't got any." And they were a little surprised. And then I had to hide in the rental car behind the theatre. And then they came looking for me, so I hid in the woods. I mean, I suppose I shouldn't admit that, but I actually got out the car. And so when I came to wing it, it was a case of, okay, there's this big red circular carpet on the stage and, floodlights and
I mean,
300.
you did have a bit of an aversion to the big red carpet, I have to say.
Well, it's a bit, yeah, the spotlight is so...
Do not step into the spot.
Yeah, the spotlight's so overrated, and but then I remember distinctly this feeling of going, oh, I'm going to step onto that, and there is not no preparation, because I've been living life all this time, and I've sat behind a camera for many, many years, very, very still, with many, many people. But that's what I put everyone through. Like how people, when I go and make a film on, whether it's someone running for president of their country or it's someone who's on their deathbed, it doesn't matter, or all in between. It really doesn't matter. And they would ask the question, well, what do I do to prepare? It's like, nothing. There's nothing you can do. In fact, any sense of preparation will probably get in the way. I just want to, we're just going to sit together and see what comes. We're going to let go completely. And I just want words out of the ether almost to take hold of you. And I'll be fine with that, and we'll see. And so if I put everyone through that, why wouldn't I put myself through that with TED? I know it's against the rules, essentially, the MO of TED, but there was a sense of, okay, well, here I am on the carpet, and I don't know where we're going here, and I don't know what I'm going to say. And then I kind of I know I talked about an out there film I made called The Midwife's Tale in Guatemala. But I can't remember. I haven't.
The Midwife's Tale in Guatemala. Yeah.
Story,
but
yeah, and did people get it? Probably not. I think some people after they were just looking at me, and I knew that they'd seen what this was.
Yeah.
And lots of people didn't get it. Well, where's the structure? We're so used to structure. We're so used to. In fact, this is a good segue into the next bit. There are two ways. It becomes binary as well. There are two ways someone can watch let's say a soul biography, a film that I've made. So I've got this big collection of human portraits.
How many have you done, by the way?
Probably about 200.
Okay.
A lot. I'm currently uploading them on the site.
Right.
There's a lot, and they're not all playing, but and they've got stiller and stiller are more essential nowadays.
I know it's funny looking back at the one we did. I was quite bouncy.
Yeah, there were a lot of words, weren't there? But you'd read a lot of books. You'd swallowed a book. You could almost see the shape in your throat.
Well, I had.
It was a great. God and the Chocolate Ice Cream. I love the title and this sense of, wow, could you have one and the other? Can you, this trajectory forward and peace, that, which is always a challenge for anyone who's cast their eyes deepwards. So what I noticed is that there are two ways in which you can watch a film. And actually, when I say watch a film, watch a soul biography, I actually mean there are two ways in which you can experience your life, really. And it seems binary. So we'll take film. So here I have these films, and they are really hard to watch because they were made in a state of severe mindfulness. That's how they're made, with a thing called interview, which is the way of this. And so they are at a pace that's not normal in the world, a pace of utter, so still attention. And so they're best watched from there. So normally what would happen, and I've seen this happen so many times, is someone is watching a film and they're essentially doing all sorts of things. They're watching it and they're looking out at the world and they're trying to make it mean something right there and then. They're being comparative first. Oh, I like that guy called Michael. Yeah, he reminds me of someone I know. Or they're trying to follow the words. I think I know where this is going. Or I wonder where this is going. There could be something useful for me. I need something. I really need something. I need to be better at this. I need to be bigger at that. I need to be all the things that humans fill in on their list. So they're not really paying attention to the experience of you. They're paying attention to what they believe the information might give them. That's not paying attention at all. Not at all. So that's how we experience most of the world. We're there. We think that there is something that's missing and that we require. So the whole of the experience of life seems to be about perpetual motion towards some place where that won't be the case.
Yeah.
But what if it wasn't? What if you could simply just sit there and let the experience of this film wash over you, wash through you? Have it mean nothing. Just have it experienced. That's an extraordinary thing. That's how the films are made. So I just sit there. There is nothing.
But I feel like they call that forth in the viewer. You call them difficult to watch. I've watched probably 30 of them over the years. And I don't find them difficult to watch. I find them difficult to half watch.
Okay, yeah, I probably shouldn't say difficult to watch. They're challenging for some people to watch in the normal state, or the state that people are normally in the world, believing that there's this trajectory forward, and they're consumed with a view to getting something in service to this moving forward. They're made with, I talked about this kind of severe, probably not severe, this kind of utter attention, mindfulness, almost like a state of human meditation almost. And there's this implicit understanding that I see of people, this understanding, and I often say is, I really don't need anything here. You belong, and there's no condition to that. There never was. There's nothing that you need to bring here in order for me to know that. And it's felt. And then there's this kind of almost like a relaxation of the nervous system almost. And then you can see someone. That's how it is. It's that simple. So it's nothing. It's no thing. It's almost like the implicit challenge of a coach. And I'm not a coach, but I know you are in some respects, or in many respects. And I guess the real challenge of a coach, and I've worked with coaches for 20 years actually, in helping them to explain what on earth it is they're doing. The challenge is they're doing nothing. There's nothing a coach, when they're doing their work in the way I understand it, in the way Tim Galway, for example, my good friend who you've met, when we went round to his house and knocked on his door, asked if we could come out to play. I spoke to him last week actually, and there's nothing a coach can give to another person. Yeah. It's nothing. It seems like they hold space, but they're not even doing that. Not really. So I've taught this for a decade of this thing called inner view, and the thing that it revolves on is this profound understanding that there is no space that needs holding. And some people get mixed up in the semantics of it, but here you are, you and me sitting together, and I'm saying, we don't need anything here. If we were to just sit here to the end of time, it would be enough. So what we're really doing is we're just dropping this sense of ourselves in the world needing to do this and needing to do that, because there's this kind of understanding that when that happens, you are discovered, you are found by words, well, by experience, of which you're a part of, not apart from. So there's this overwhelming feeling of belonging, and not even being able to explain it. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't need explaining. None of this stuff needs explaining. I remember well, we were sitting around that dinner table in that Brazilian restaurant, and I suppose I should, well, maybe I will say this, because it was very funny and actually very profound. We were all laughing, we're just making this day up, and Tim's was the last door we knocked on to see if he could come out to play. We decided to go to this place, and we're the four of us sitting around this table in this Brazilian restaurant. We were there for hours and hours and hours, talking about all this philosophy and having a laugh and this and that. And you said, I remember being at college and all the guys, can I say that one?
Yeah.
All right, okay, it's not embarrassing. And this was my sense of, my memory of it. And you said something like, yeah, like 3 or 4 of you were sitting in on a Saturday night, which is kind of sad for a student, three or four guys sitting in talking philosophy, the meaning of life. And you were getting very deep about it. And then you or one of your friends said, yeah, you know what? If we were only getting laid, we probably wouldn't need to do this, and maybe that's it, just being involved in life. You don't need to understand all this. So sometimes this spiritual search that people go on sometimes seems unnecessary. I mean, I guess it's a hobby and it's fun and it does give one a real sense of something. But what if you were it already, and what if you could experience life already in everything?
Well, I think that is actually literally the most fundamental shift that I have seen in myself, that I see in clients, is when it goes from creation to discovery. When it goes from trying to make myself something and make my life something, to seeing the richness of what is already here, what has always been here, and letting that come through more.
Yeah. Years ago, many years, maybe 18 years ago, before I picked up the camera, I remember I'd worked out, or someone had told me, and then I'd kind of thought about it a bit. I worked out how the human mind worked. And how you can reprogram your mind in service to a big life and whatever. And I thought it was a wonderful thing. It's like, wow, I understand why I've taken such decisions. This would be really useful. You know, it's pre the Secret movie days and all that. It was pre that. And I remember setting a business up, and I was in a hotel in London, and there were about 50 people laid out on a carpet lying down, and it was essentially reprogramming the mind. I suppose kind of what NLP does, but I'd never heard of all that stuff. And I got this sharp stabbing sensation very shortly after I set this business up, probably 4 sessions in, and it was going really well. And it didn't have words, but if it had words, it said, "You can never do this again." I was like, damn, you know, this was going to be easy or easier.
Yeah.
And my sense of it was, there's no freedom, there's no liberation. It's just changing the lens and changing the thing. And I wondered about that, and you know, hey presto, here I am. I wrote a piece called the Grand Human Predicament, trying to sum some of this up, and you can't sum it up, but essentially I just observed that most people, most of the time, are so busy feeling like they don't belong, that they're in this state of perpetual development, perpetual self-improvement, sometimes in a formal sort of way, and sometimes just all over the place. And so there's always this idea of being better so that you belong. But from where I sat behind the camera, all I could see was this extraordinary humanness in people, and the fact that there was nowhere to go. And it occurred to me that, oh, that's kind of funny. So there's this seeking journey, but there's nowhere to go. There's no requirement for it. But I do understand it. And I do understand why it might seem like that. But what if it wasn't that? What if actually just sitting still, you suddenly realized that you were it. You were part of it. Like, I've had all sorts of people in front of the camera, in front of big audiences, you know, break down in tears. And, you know, I'd asked, there was one girl I remember once, we had a big audience, this huge screen, and the image was out, so there she was, and shaking all over the place, and you know, I just said, well, what are you looking for? Because she seemed really upset.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm looking for love. And it kind of took me by surprise. I said, why are you looking for what you are? And then everything, it occurred to her.
Yeah.
And it's a subtlety thing, and if you try to understand it, it doesn't seem to work very well. But you don't need to understand this stuff. You just need an experience of it.
Yeah.
And the experience of it is everywhere all the time. The only thing that gets in the way is something. And so this is really no thing.
There's very much an element of, you know, it's an old metaphor, but, you know, how aware are fish of the water they're swimming in? You know, how aware are we of what we are?
You told me this. You told me that you were responsible for this one, this picture in my head, which I can't get out. So thank you for this. And it's a good one.
I mean, I'll take credit now.
I take credit now, but then you can withdraw it.
I'll diffuse blame later.
You can withdraw it, but this is being recorded, so you can't, unless you edit it out. But it's not a bad thing. But it did. I've always wondered whether we are the grand creators of everything, You know, we seem to be like, here I am, I've got a knife, my thoughts become reality. If I think better, you know, then I create things. If I do things, you know, if you want something to change, you do something and it changes. But I always had a sense that we, it's not as it seems. Maybe we're the objects of creation or the subjects of creation. You know, like life is lived through us and we're not quite as in control as we thought. And you painted this picture of this fairground ride that the under twos usually go on, which is just usually a circle with cars on or something like that, and you plonk your 2-year-old in and they're feverishly steering this car around the corners and stuff, but the steering wheel isn't linked up to anything. And I love that idea, and it didn't haunt me, but it did stay with me. And it's like, yeah, that kind of describes some of it. So I think I've exert this real control, and so I'm pushing my life so hard towards over there because I think I should be over there because I've looked out with this thing called a pair of eyes onto this physical world and seen someone that seems like they're okay over there. So I want some of that, so I'll head towards there. That's where I think I should be. In fact, the whole world reflects it. You know, I look on the television, on billboards, I listen to everything from everyone from my parents to my school teachers to my friends. They're all saying, well, we should do this, we should do that. And now I'm kind of confused, but I got a sense of something, so I'm heading towards it. And so you live your life. But what if your life could be lived through you? And there's this real sense of being taken, being a part of it, rather apart from it, a part of it, and just kind of living this life in this completely and utterly different way. And I think people do that sometimes, and
I talk about it a lot at the moment as a magic carpet ride. And the magic carpet is there in any moment, and you can get on it or not. And if you do, it will take you somewhere.
It will take you somewhere. That's the thing.
Yes.
That's the big, that's the cusp of it, isn't it? It's one side or the other. So normally we're exerting this control over our lives because we think that for anything to change we have to do something, because that's the evidence that we've seen or assumed. But what if it wasn't that? What if and this became very metaphorically obvious when making film, and physically obvious as well. And so someone is sitting there and they're speaking words out to me in this kind of interview style. I mean, it doesn't happen very often, but it can happen, and I get it because most conversations are like that. So someone is exerting control on what it is that they say. But if they sat still enough, and it doesn't take very long, words find them. Experience finds them. And it takes almost no time sometimes in a state of stillness. And it's not the absence of, motion. It's really the absence of all the things that usually distract you. And then suddenly there's this sense of something that just finds you. You ignore it, but if you didn't ignore it, what would it do? You suddenly feel life, if you like. You feel life. And words are spoken into the world, and words are the thing of film sometimes. And when words come from there, it's extraordinary. Yeah. For someone to realize, for a seeker, for example, and I have this fairly often, a lifelong, decades and decades and decades of seeking, and just sitting there and saying nothing, and someone saying, I never needed to look, did I? They said it out into the world, and they knew it. I think what if that were true? But it's empirical. You can try it.
My favorite line of poetry that I quote incessantly, it was in the front of one of my books, I think The Space Within, is from T.S. Eliot. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. And that's what it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember writing a poem called The Whisper and the Echo, and it was the same thing. So someone trying to get out of a door, and when they got out of the door, they realized that where they'd been was the right side of the door, kind of thing. And it seems a lot simpler than we've led ourselves to believe. And in the context of, and I suppose we're talking all kind of ethereally here, but it's not ethereal. It speaks to the way that you can be in the world, and the world as it is at the moment, which is, what is it? I mean, I suppose it's always been in conflict. The very nature of being human is in conflict. It's we at the heart of it is like we don't feel like we belong. We feel disconnected, and we really yearn for this sense of peace. And so we're doing something about that. But what if a whole bunch of people kind of gave up on that? I went, you know what? Maybe I'm okay. Maybe I'm enough as I am. Maybe this is enough as it is. Of course, things will change, because once you surrender to that, suddenly where your information comes from is different. Where your the provocation to do something in the world comes from is different. Your very footsteps are driven from somewhere else, and you realize what it is that you're a part of, and you don't want it, you don't believe it. It's not believe. It's just this sense of knowing, this sense of certainty that you are a part of it, no matter what. The certainty of all the things in life, that's not true. Life is still messy and fragile. In fact, I wrote a poem called Fragile once, which is probably one of my favorites. It just basically says we're in this, we're all the same. We're all, we can all be broken in a moment. In fact, Tim Ferriss put it up on his blog the other day. I remember.
Do you have it? I mean, I'd love to hear it. We'll link to it.
Yeah. I'll.
As well.
Okay. Yeah. I'll. Here you go. I'll go. It won't take me long. So I've got this site called Soul Biographies, and there's this thing called the Library of the Human Soul, and in there are all the films, and so that's where I go.
Yeah.
It'd be great if I could remember my words, but I think the state. You'll know this. The state. You can be in two different states when you write. You can be in a state of usefulness, I'm going to write something to serve this audience, or you can be essentially taking dictation. And I like to put the fact that I'm taking dictation down sometimes that is the reason I can't remember anything.
Sure.
it might just be a bad memory. Okay. So this is called Fragile. It's about twice as long as the glorious Ignoramus, which is still very short. So, Fragile. We are fragile, you and me. Though we act strong, our lives are held together with thoughts of where we might be tomorrow and of disappointed yesterdays. At any moment, we might shatter, we might fall to our knees, weighed down by the terror of being so far from our own control. Dare we look up, we'd not know where to go or what to do. We're fragile, you and me. If we were to turn to each other, we might see the whole world on their knees, hurting and seemingly alone. But none of us are. We're fragile together.
Nice.
And yeah, I think I like it because there's not this sense of kind of superiority in this. Life has always, when I've looked at it from afar, it's always seemed, now I'm 56, so, growing up in the 70s and 80s and 90s, there's always this sense of achievement and grandiose, I want to become bigger and better and whatever. And I think I like that because it just speaks to a thing that's really going on. Like if you were to really, really give someone total and utter undivided attention and they were to speak the truth, which is my business, if you like. And that's what I'm hoping happens when I sit with someone. If they were ready to tell the truth, they would, in the end, there would be a sense of that as well as many other things as well. It could be joy-filled, it could be whatever, but there is this sense of total fragility in all of this, as opposed to someone who would sit there and go, I've really made it, but I suffer, but I've really made it now, I've got it sorted. I don't think we ever quite get it really sorted. There can be this tremendous sense of peace in in what that poem described as well. You know, we're in this together.
Yeah, I wrote a thing, one of my favorite things I've ever written. It's not a poem, but it's a section of the book Space Within called Being Human. And I talk about how if somebody goes to a therapist and tells them, pours out their life, the therapist will go, okay, let's find the root causes and let's fix them. And if they go to a coach, traditional coach, and they say, well, okay, here's my life, the coach will go, okay, well, what do you want to work on next? What do you want to create? What do you want to do? Whereas what I find in many of the conversations that I have is somebody will pour out their life, and all I'll have to say is, me too.
Okay. There's two important things. I'm going to read you something else, actually, because it's central. It's central to everything that I've known, and it probably just says what you just said. And this is a very, very short piece, and it's called Undivided and Slow Still Attention. And it goes, before your words of encouragement and well-timed advice, before items gifted at beyond an arm's length, did you ever consider the one thing that might turn the entire world on its axis? Your undivided and so still attention. We never thought to do that.
Yeah.
Like, I like that in that film, I build you as a nudger of sticks. The stick isn't stuck in poo sticks. Yeah. It doesn't need therapy. The stick doesn't need therapy. It just needs a nudge. And actually the nudge comes from yourself. And this is the most extraordinary thing to date I've noticed. I often catch myself and go, what am I doing here? Talking about this, making films about, people beyond what you think you can see. I never set out to do it. I've hardly ever read a book in my life, which is the truth. I mean, I have when I was at school, but I don't read books. All this has come not even from wondering about it. It's come through not paying attention. It's just like through nothing. It suddenly occurs.
Yeah.
All of it. There's very little that I've ever speak about nowadays or write about or whatever that has come from some kind of physical stimulus. I don't follow ideas to their end. I just wait until something finds me. And what I think is quite contrarian and extraordinary and good news is the fact that that's the capacity of anyone at any time. There is nothing, in one sense, that you don't know. It's just you don't have access. You can't see it. So, for example, people often ask me questions and say, well, what do you think about this? I've got this big idea going on and whatever. And the answer would be, well, why are you asking me? I could tell you, and then you would have another idea, which isn't an experience. So why don't we just sit still together and see if it finds you? Because if it finds you, that's a completely and utterly different experience. It just fills you, and you don't have another idea to try out that was given to you by someone else. That's an amazing thing, and I know that's quite an affront to many things, but I think there's a real truth to it.
It's an affront that's very near and dear to my heart, because it's at the heart of what I've seen moves humans. He's getting in touch with that which already moves humans. Whatever that is.
Yeah, and so back to that thing about when I was teaching interview. Except I'm not teaching it; I'm showing it. An interview being the way of this with a camera, and actually without a camera, the camera is irrelevant. But how can you sit with someone, and there just be attention, which isn't your attention? It's not attention. Isn't something that you give. It's not something that you do. It's just there. Like I went to a conference on presence, where my job, apparently, I was billed as someone who would help us be more present. And I go, no. I think I took the microphone and said, no, that's not the nature of presence. The presence is just there. It's always there. It's never not there. In fact, you're part of it. There's nothing you need to do to experience it. In other words, there's nothing you can do to better your experience of presence. Nothing is the operating thing here. Do nothing, and it doesn't get in the way, and there it is. So peace is not something you have to do something towards. Peace is a state that just exists. It just exists. You don't get to experience it because you're doing too much. I was going to say shit, but I've just said it. You're just doing too much shit. You're just doing too much. You think that you have to do something in order to get over there, but there's no over there. It's here, and it's here. Yeah. And so, if you were to do nothing, no thing, what I've noticed is there's the experience, and it seems absurd, but the experience is true. Wow, so there's a revolution in that, like a quiet revolution. There's a way to be in the world like that, but it seems so contrarian, so I've heard.
I think the point is that it is revolutionary in the sense not of being controversial, but in the sense of being standing the world on its head, standing the way that, when I wrote the Inside Out Revolution, the original title was The Inside Out Experiment, because that's how I experienced it. I kind of thought, well, what would it be like to live like that? What would it be like to live from nothing and see where it takes me? But it quickly became apparent from the readers that the title needed to be The Inside Out Revolution, because it was so radically different and had so many implications that were different to the way we think about life unfolding. This is a bit contrived, Nick. It's going to be the one bit that is contrived, because I do love to see where people go with this question, and yet I think I suspect you're gonna try and decline the job. But at the end of these, I like to make people temporary emperors of the universe. So for the next few minutes, you do have power. Like, you can control what happens, and what will you use that power for in the world?
I suppose one could put an idea into the world and say, well, we could do this or we could do that, and wouldn't it be good if this or that? But I think there's only one experience that someone requires to change the trajectory of everything. And that's the experience, not even of themselves, but an experience of what it is that they're part of.
Yeah.
And I really wrestle with this, because I realize that it's beyond all things. It's just an experience. And I know that it works. I often sit with people. So we have this community now, and a whole bunch of people meet up on Zoom, and the craving seems to be to sit still in this. And I'm thinking, wow, if one was the emperor of, did you say the world, or was it the universe? Universe? Oh, the universe. Excellent. Oh. Well, the universe is probably fine. The human world might be a little challenged, but it's a wonderful challenge, because it seems a wonderful challenge, a pain in the ass sometimes. But if you could just, if you could sit still enough for just a moment and somehow realize that you were it. In other words, you were everything. And the words kind of run out, but there's this experience, and it's terribly simple. There's nothing to do, no thing to do. And it seems so simple, and it's really amazing to do it with someone. Like, I find it really, my way is to just sit with someone really quietly. I mean, it might be full of banter. I mean, I felt it here. It's like, this is cool. This is amazing. We're just chit-chatting about, well, I can't remember really, about this and everything. And there's this sense of, I really enjoy being here. Man, surely that must be it. That during our encounter, that there was nothing else. I wasn't thinking about, I wonder whether anyone's watching. I wasn't thinking, I wonder if this is in service to anything. I wasn't thinking about anything else. Here we were.
The whole name of the show, Might Help, can't hurt.
Although it might hurt because, well, this is.
I'm going to have to change the title. I mean, we're like 30 episodes in, Nick.
All right. It might help. Could possibly hurt quite a lot. Yeah, but anyway, Emperor of the whatever. You're it. You're enough. You belong. There was nothing that ever was required. Additionally, you belong. There was no condition. Totally unconditional. And if you were to sit, you would know that. If you were to stop, you would know that. If you would stop running over there, you would know that. And it's no great shakes. It's no. There's no instruction that you have to follow because it's no thing. Because you're it. There's nowhere to go, and it can be experienced as soon as you stop trying to work it out. So that's the riddle of it almost. Yeah. And it seems so utterly simple. And you can pass this experience on. That's what I found. Group of people sitting there, suddenly it's like, oh, maybe you forget in the next moment, but you did have this experience, and it's like, God, there's something there, and it changes the trajectory, and it diffuses. It puts one into confusion a little bit because you go, well, I don't quite understand what's going on, but you can lose your need to understand what's going on. But where your action is then driven from, where your sense of your acts in the world are driven from, is completely different. Completely different. How you are with people is completely different. What you can't fight, you can only love.
That's a beautiful place to bring it to a close.
There you go. Excellent. Well, this is a pleasure. Thank you.
An absolute treat.
Yeah, wonderful.